Okay, we're live. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the first PASA Alumni on Air of the year. My name is Alex Satoshi, and I'm currently the Alumni Relations Chair for the PASA Network organization. Additionally, I serve as the Alumni Engagement and Career Services Intern at the Rossier School of Education. We will be hosting these PASA Alumni on Air events approximately once a month this academic year. Each month, we will be talking about a different topic with various PASA alumni who are giving their time to share advice with current students. Please be sure to keep filling out the Google form. The link is a bit.ly/PASA alumni, or email me with any ideas you have for this series. If you're tuning in live, thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. Feel free to submit any questions in the chat feature on the right, and I'll be sure to bring them up to the panelists. I also want to remind everyone that these broadcasts will become YouTube videos after the event is over, so if you have classmates who couldn't make it or you want to watch it later, you can still watch it online at your own convenience on our YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be hosting a recent alumni roundtable featuring two class of 2015 PASA alums, Arlen and Michelle. After these two introduce themselves, I'll start asking them questions that PASA students have submitted or that you, the live participants, will submit. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions from them, including where they currently work, what they do, and what they were involved with during their time in PASA. Arlen, will you start for us?
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Arlen De Leon Mendiola. My pronouns are he, him, his. Currently, I am one of the program managers over at our Seneca office over at UC Santa Cruz. So our office is the main office that works with the student organizations on campus. So whether it ranges from academic to cultural to professional to Greek letter, basically everything underneath the sun over here at Santa Cruz. And basically my role is, being an advisor, supporting them in their event planning and their leadership growth, and whatnot. When I was in PASA, my assistantships were over in the Career Center, as well as dorm site advising. And while my time at PASA, I was the alumni chair from 2 years ago for PASA Network, as well as the founding internal co-chair for the Asian Pacific Graduate Student Association.
Great, thank you. Michelle?
Hi, my name is Michelle Sorkin, and I am currently an academic advisor at San Diego State University in the Weber Honors College. So my day-to-day tasks, I typically meet with students for the majority of my day through walk-ins or appointments, making sure that our students understand our honors curriculum. I also, help out with our prospective student reception, so that usually takes place on our our preview day at SDSU. Also help out with our honors graduation ceremony at the end of the spring semester. And then I have a little fun things I get to do here and there. I get to go to orientation and talk to students at orientation. So a couple of other events on campus that I get to go and kind of help promote and encourage people to apply to our honors college at SDSU. So while I was at USC in PASA, my first year I worked at Student Athlete Academic Services as an assistant learning specialist. I also worked at the Price School of Public Policy as a student services assistant. And then my second year I changed assistantships and I worked for program boards. So for the undergraduate student government, I was a graduate advisor. And then I also worked at Los Angeles City College as a recruitment outreach graduate assistant. So and I was also serving with Arlen on the PASA Network board as the finance chair.
Great, thank you so much. And I noticed that a couple more viewers have tuned in. So if you missed the introduction part, feel free to submit questions on the chat feature, which should be to the right of the broadcast. And I'll be sure to ask those questions to Arlen and Michelle. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the submitted questions that current PASA students asked before this took place. So the first question to kind of start us off for both of you is, how did you get into student affairs? How did you end up in the PASA program?
I feel like I could talk about this for days because it's something that I think a lot of people who enter student affairs love talking about. But for me, I'll try to give you a quick snippet. I was pre-med going into undergrad, wanted to do pre-med until about my junior year, bio major, and kind of realized, junior year that I wasn't really that passionate about it or as passionate as I expected I would be. And I was involved in orientation. I was an RA. I did different student organizations. And I think through all of those, I realized I just loved connecting with other students, and especially as an RA and as an orientation leader, getting to work with students who are new or had issues or challenges that they were trying to figure out. So I really loved that aspect of it. And so then, when I graduated from undergrad, it took a couple of years off and worked outside of student affairs, higher education, and then was fortunate enough to be offered a position back in student affairs. And that kind of solidified my passion for working with students. And from then on, I knew I wanted to pursue this, and USC sounded like the best option for me to continue. So it's kind of how I got my start.
Thanks, Michelle.
So for me, so when I was in undergrad over at UC Santa Cruz, I was also a bio major. But for me, like, I was heavily involved in student organizing and being a leader on campus. And for me, like, one of the most pivotal moments within my activism on this campus was really engaging with a lot of administrators of supporting our cultural productions that really talk about, my people's history, our culture, and our experience, and just really engaging with a lot of like higher ups that just like, this is something that's valuable, that's necessary, that we bring diversity to this university. And in that process, like, it was interesting just engaging with a lot of folks of just how, like, even then, like, I could still see the politics that were involved, and just thinking about, like, like, I don't have the kind of student affairs professional or the administrator that, like, I could identify with and that I could really trust and really understand it, and really see, like, them being an ally in the work that, like, I do, like, as a student organizer. And so part of it for me is, like, I didn't go into student affairs right away after graduating, because me being a bio major, me being a first generation college student, it's like, well, like, I have to do this. Like, I have to go into biotech or healthcare or doing nonprofit work that's in healthcare. But through my network, like, I got plugged into AmeriCorps, and I was doing a lot of nonprofit work in the middle school and high school sector of education. But then after that, I started thinking about, like, I really want to be in the higher ed realm of just really engaging with students again with that in that space, and how, like, I really miss having those critical conversations. And I just really thought about my own personal experience and just how for the longest time, like, student affairs was always that dirty little secret of mine of, like, yeah, like, I want to do it, but I don't know how to get there. Or, like, because of me being a first gen, like, I don't know if this is the right path for me to be successful. And I know that, like, I just took it on the whim of, like, let's go to this grad fair that's happening in SF, and let's just see, and let's talk to prospective recruiters, and even just telling my story to them, like, just feeling affirmed by it and being like, no, like, this is the work that I want to be doing, which led me to PASA.
Great, thank you both for sharing that. So you talked a little bit about what assistantships you had and what orgs you were involved in during your time in PASA, but can you talk a little bit more in depth about what your time in PASA was like for you?
I think for me, like, I recognize that I suck at transition. And so, like, my first year, like, when I got to USC, I wasn't really involved in a lot of things. Like, I was just really committed on just, like, let's just get through, like, the classes, like, because, like, I want to be on point. Mostly because, like, the GPA that I had in my undergrad, like, it wasn't up to par. Like, it was something that I struggled with, especially being a student organizer. And so I was very focused on, like, let's just do the classes. But I think throughout the course of first year and just seeing how, like, some of the things that I would want to see, like, whether it's from PASA Network or from the program, like, I wasn't getting it. And I thought to myself, like, well, you have the agency to, like, to do something about it. So you can't keep complaining for so long. So why not, like, step up? Why not be a leader within the community? And that was part of the reason why I decided to be the Alumni Relations Chair back then, of just, like, I want to be more involved, because if I'm not engaging in my sense of agency and, like, putting my voice out there, like, the kind of experience that I want won't be there. I have to take an active role in that, which is also why, like, I got involved more with the Asian American Pacific Islander community on campus too. Just how, like, for me being one of, I think, 7 or 10 API identified folks within our cohort, it's hard, like, having that unique experience and not being able to relate with other folks. And so that's why, like, I wanted to go larger out instead of broader community on campus, especially within the graduate community.
Yeah, for me, I really used my time at USC to explore functional areas that I wanted to work in later on. So before going to USC, I already knew I had experience in residential education. I knew I didn't want to do that long term. Had experience advising. That was definitely something I was interested in. And orientation I had experience in. But I knew there were so many other areas that I hadn't even touched yet. So for me, I wanted to explore things that I, didn't really have experience in. And that's what I ended up doing a lot of. My first year I worked in student athlete academic services, and I love sports and I love, physical activity. And I thought, oh, wow, like that's going to be such a great experience for me. And I'm probably going to fall in love with it. And it was actually quite the opposite. For me, that just wasn't going to be a good fit. And so I'm happy I did that then, though, year-long commitment versus discovering that later on that wasn't my niche. And then discovering too student government, so getting to work with the undergraduate student government and program board made me really realize I loved working with different student organizations. And funny enough, I didn't even pursue any advising because I kind of felt like I was already understanding of that might be a good fit for me. So my time at USC, I tried as much as I could, even working at the community college and trying outreach, which, was a good experience as well. So I really focused on trying things. And even if I didn't like them, I was going to try it for as long as I could. And then, when I did my job search, that kind of helped me realize what areas to focus on instead of having a broad search. So.
Great. Thank you both for that insight. So now that you've graduated from PASA a little over a year ago, what has been challenging about transitioning from being a PASA student to a full-time student affairs professional?
So for me, it is, I miss the classroom environment. Last year, one of my colleagues was out of the office for a few weeks, and she asked me to step into her classroom, and it was a first year freshman course, and it had to do with identity. And so we talked about a lot of different theories that we talked about in PASA in our student development course, and just hearing, like, I was just facilitating, just as our instructors did in PASA, and just hearing students and just the conversations they have about identity was just so wonderful to hear again, because I missed it. And I missed participating. Obviously, as the instructor, I couldn't do as much, as I would when I was in PASA, but I think I missed that. Like, I think in my particular role, and Arlen, you might have different experiences based on your role, but for my role, we don't get as deep. I rarely, occasionally we'll have students where we get to talk about issues, but a lot of it is just kind of getting to the point, and I hear about their lives, but we don't really connect in a way where we talk about current issues or events or things that are going on. So I think for me, I'm trying to find still a way to have that. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I need to go back to school again and do more classes, or whatever that may be. But I think that's a big transition, is just not having a space currently to have those conversations. And I didn't realize how much I really missed that, and I needed to have those conversations. Transitioning full-time, it's nice going home and not having homework or essays or any readings to do. I mean, that's just kind of a superficial thing, but it is actually harder too, because I think when you have your cohort, you have a built-in support group and friend base, and I think it's harder when you're full-time. You're kind of just living on your own, and you kind of have to go find those more so, as opposed to them just kind of being there. And it's a little easier, I thought, when I was a student, to connect to people and meet new people that way.
I would also agree with the classroom part too, because I think for me, like, it was interesting going to UC Santa Cruz, where like there's not like a strong like NASPA like culture there, because like I would imagine with folks that are down at USC and just like even just with the institutions down there overall, like the SoCal network is very strong. And I think for me, like transitioning up here, like it was hard, like not having that, or not even knowing who like on this campus like is aware of NASPA and like things that we talk about in the course. And so at certain times, like I was very appreciative how, like, even though I'm the only staff member that has gone through a student affairs program, like folks are still critical about current issues that are affecting our students as well as like our profession overall. And I find it funny of how like I'm basically the NASPA guy on staff, of being like, oh, like what are these different opportunities that we can take advantage of? Like, how do we really advance the work that we do within our office, within our campus, but doing it more regionally or even nationally? And so even though the classroom isn't necessarily the same for me now, like, I think it goes back into the culture of like the office of just like, and it's hard to assess that too. Like when you're doing that job search and you are interviewing, of just like, where's that professional development coming from? Like, can you even gauge that even there? And I know it's very unique of like coming across a campus that is dedicated to each staff member and their own growth and how they want to be professionally. And I feel that like I've been very appreciative throughout this whole year of like, you know, having been able to present at conferences. Like I think I've presented at least 3 times already within my first year in this position, talking about the work that we do, but also now being able to serve on a lot of committees on campus too. And I don't know, like part of it, like I always kept thinking about that because we don't have that classroom experience anymore. You know, you really have to seize like the professional development opportunities that are out there because you never know when the next one will be. And I know like I'm very committed to my growth. I'm very intentional and like I want to make sure I capitalize on that. I also agree with Michelle about the support group too, just how like, you know, like while you're in your program, you have your court, you have folks that might be readily living with you. Like me and Michelle were living together first year. And we could just like talk or just, you know, within the same city or in the same county. But now like our cohort is all across the US and we're in different time zones. And so it's sometimes hard of like, you know, how do you establish that support system again? And I think for me, like I'm very fortunate, like, well, I'm going back to the Bay Area. Like I have family, like that's 45 minutes away. Like I still have friends over here, but I can only imagine for other folks who like went further out. It's like, how do you really establish that? And I know for me, like I'm very big on like maintaining relationships and like really recognizing that, you know, like right now, like this is the easiest it'll ever be for us to hang out and spend time. And so if I still want to invest in these relationships, what's it going to take to maintain it?
Got it. Well, thank you both for sharing that. Arlen, to your point about professional development, we were actually talking about potentially doing a PASA alumni on air on how alumni are keeping up with what's happening in the field and maintaining their professional development after graduation. So I'll let you know if we do that.
Cool.
Okay, so the next question is kind of the flip side. So what has been the most rewarding or exciting parts of transitioning to being a full-time student affairs professional?
I think for me, I think one of the unique things about our office is that we really operate on the whole student agency model. And that's actually in one of the readings. I can't remember which course it was, but it's in one of the readings that y'all will take. But really in the student agency model, it's really talking about this partnership between staff and students of how like, it's not as a staff person, I'm telling you X, Y, Z, do this or do that, but really of like how to empower students to like, you know, make decisions that they are the key decision makers within their community. And as staff role, it's not like it's them doing everything and we don't do anything. It's more of, I'll give you the tools, like I'll be your sounding board, but at the end of the day, you decide and we'll be there, like whether, you know, you make a mistake or not. And I think what's been really great for me is that like there have been so many wonderful conversations, so many like moments of growth that I've seen within our student leaders over here by doing this practice of agency. And like, I think what was really rewarding for me most recently was that I was invited to be the one of the name callers for like a graduation ceremony within one of our ethnic communities, and just being able to like call out the names of our student leaders. Like it was just really humbling of just like, we went through so much this year and I'm here on your graduation day and I'm able to like be on that stage with you. So that was one of my most favorite moments recently.
Thank you.
As a staff member, I think it's really wonderful to be able to see the growth of what you're implementing. I felt when I was a graduate assistant, and for me, you know, I was only in my positions for a year at a time, but I never felt like there was enough change that I could make or impact I could make that would be long term. So now as a professional staff member and now I'm entering my second year, I'm seeing that I can, you know, my first year I kind of learned and I made a couple of, you know, changes here and there, but for the most part, I wanted to see how the year went and to see what the issues were, where I could help fix things. And now that I'm in my second year, I'm able to finally implement things and make some changes, hopefully for the better. I think they're for the better. And even now, thinking forward to next fall, I'm already thinking of ways that I can change things starting the school year off. And so it's just, I think that's the most exciting part for me, is seeing that I can really take ownership of that, and I can make decisions that I think are really, based on, patterns or data that I'm seeing, and be able to see that through and not leave at the end of the year and hope that it goes well for the next person. Okay, bye. Like, it's nice to actually be able to see that and see the progress. So.
Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about what's been challenging and rewarding, looking back, is there anything that you wish you would have taken advantage of while in the PASA program that you didn't, or that you wish you had spent more time on that, you didn't get enough of, that would have been helpful?
I think I wish I would have done more networking at USC in different functional areas again. Even though I didn't have assistantships, I wish I would have gone over and, had lunch or done more to talk to the directors of different units on campus. And, I think we're encouraged to do that a lot in our first year. But then, you get very busy your second year, and then you start thinking about applying for jobs, and it just kind of falls off your radar. And I wish I would have maybe gone to different events, even not necessarily in student affairs, but maybe across the different colleges on campus to meet other people in fields, because it's good to have partners in student affairs, but it's also good to have partners in different areas, like in law or business or, and engineering, other areas that you're probably going to be working with students going into those areas. So it's good to have that understanding of, other areas aside from where you work. So I wish I would have gone to different events on campus and just talked to more people to learn more about other careers and opportunities.
I would definitely agree with the networking piece. I think it's interesting, so I find out later about how my application was selected for my position, of just how for me, with the work that I've done in the past, I've done nonprofit work, I've done career advising, I've done academic advising, but there wasn't anything that was too much heavily on campus activities. And so there was at one point where the reviewers were about to dismiss my application, but the fact that there was staff that knew me and being no, they could vouch for me, being no, consider him in the review process. It really attests to it's also part of who do you know within the different offices or different universities that you're applying to, because they could be that one key person that says hey, let's actually move this person's application to the interview pile rather than the not interview. I think the other piece for me that I wish I spent more time in was learning more about assessment, because I think we hear it a lot at conferences or from other folks about really having this culture of assessment and really being able to defend why do we do what we do. And I think that this is something that our office is prioritizing this year, of how do we get better with this, especially in the political climate that we're in. And I think that especially within my position, it's very interesting in understanding not only the politics on campus, but also within the UC system too, and how certain decisions are affecting our campus, how it is affecting the student population. Because right now we're dealing with mandate enrollment where we don't have the capacity to house folks both on and off campus. We're dealing with a housing crisis right now. And so I think one of the things that I wish at least the PASA program did more, which is really having us really think and explore what are the political climates that we're going in. We're not only applying to work in these positions, but what is that context that our students are going to be dealing with and living with every day, and what is our role within that? How do we go about and transforming that situation together?
Great. So most of the classes in the PASA program are still pretty similar to when you took your classes here. So a student asked, what class has been the most helpful in your current role, or maybe a class that you didn't appreciate enough when you took it that you've used or remembered thoughts and theories from?
I loved legal issues. It was very stressful. Dr. Mahdi's amazing, but that is the one that I've referred to again and again, and just understanding the different things that we can and cannot do as administrators, that has been extremely helpful. So when you're writing your briefs, even though it might be challenging, just remember there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's been amazingly helpful. The other one that I remember was, I think it was like in the second year, was it management? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That was really helpful. We had Dr. Merriman come in, or she was my professor, and it was just fascinating to learn about different issues that arise and how, upper level administration handle it. We've had a couple of students pass away, unfortunately, here, and it's been very interesting seeing SDSU's response versus USC's and understanding how to support students and what we need to provide for students. So just, different issues on campus. I think that was a really, really helpful class for me as well.
I think for me, I would have to say ethno. It might be a surprise, but only because it made me be a better writer. And I think part of one of the key messages I took away from that class was just how know your reason as to why you use every word or every sentence, and being able to defend that. And really, I took that and I applied it into the context of student organizing, of really knowing your why, of just can you really talk about why you're doing what you're doing, in your programming and your organization. And no matter what, you can't control what people are going to say or do, because they all have their own judgments and perceptions about it. And then it becomes about how can we be willing to engage in that conversation, whether good or bad. So I really draw that way, and especially being a bio major and now going to education of okay, I know how to do labs, but how do I write?
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. So that concludes our question and answer portion today. Do any of you have any final thoughts or things you didn't get to get in there that you'd like to offer to current students?
I would say you might be surprised with how many gray hairs that you get within the first year. Because I keep checking, I'm oh, that's a new one. I'm going to name it after this student. But besides that, I would just say really be intentional about your journey within student affairs, and just really go after opportunities that really excite you, that really motivate you, that rejuvenate you. And I think that there will always be moments that will stress you out. There will be moments that will challenge you. But I think part of what I do is I keep going back to my why, about why am I here in the first place? What is that change I'm looking to do and be a part of? And sometimes that's enough for me to keep going.
Yeah, I would say the first year, you're right, it is going to be a big transition, especially if it's your first time having a full-time job. And it's going to be a transitional phase, not only for you becoming a full-time worker, but also just who are you now that you no longer are a student at this time, because that's your identity. My identity, I had a little bit of time in between, but for the most part, I was comfortable being a student. I understood who I was as a student. And then you take away that aspect of yourself, and it's just kind of okay, well, what I do now? I'm an advisor, but what else do I do outside of that? How do I find other things that I can do that I'm passionate about? So it's just, you're going to be going through a big change, and that's fine. That's part of life. And don't be afraid if you're feeling a little bit off, or you feel like you're searching for something and it's not there. I think that's completely normal. And, hopefully you'll find a way to make that work for you. But yeah, it is a transition, not only for the job, but personally too. So just be ready for that, and you'll be okay.
Well, thank you all so much, whoever is watching now or later. We appreciate you taking the time to hear from us. Thank you to those who submitted questions beforehand as well. To Arlen and Michelle, thank you for taking time out of your busy Monday to share insight with current PASA students. We all really appreciate it and took something away from it. Arlen and Michelle are both on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with them and ask them any further questions if you want to talk to them about their current roles or anything they spoke about today. Our next PASA Alumni on Air is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, November 29th. I know a few of you wanted a different day to accommodate your work schedule, so we're going to try out Tuesday. So stay tuned for more details, and remember to fill out the Google form with any suggestions you have. And thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Fight on.
Fight on.